Thank you very much, Jonathan, and thank you, ladies and gentlemen, for being here. I can't tell you how excited I am to have the greatest gift that any candidate for office could ever hope to have with 13 days to go in an election cycle. And that gift is the gift of your interest and attention. This is an extraordinarily important moment in the life of our country, and this is an extraordinarily important office that Elizabeth and I both seek. I am a socially moderate, fiscally prudent individual who's had the privilege of serving 15 communities in Northwest Connecticut in the Connecticut General Assembly over the past 18 years. I've always had the courage to be independent and to do what's right for the people I represent. And my promise to those whom I seek to serve is that the person that I've been in Hartford is the person that I'll be in Washington, D.C. The things that I've done in Hartford are the things that I will do in Washington, D.C. And what I have done in Hartford is developed a record of working to find solutions by not just seeking answers, but by molding answers with people from every political philosophy. Yes, I'm a Republican, but I'm an American before I'm a Republican. And I think what's crippling Congress now is a hyper-partisanship which is causing people to put the interests of their party ahead of the interests of our nation and our respective districts. So my commitment to all of you is, if you give me the responsibility to represent you, will be to always seek only your approval and to act in a way that's best for all of us here in Connecticut, without regard to whatever the political fallout might be in Washington, D.C. So thanks again for being here. I look forward to what I'm sure will be an exciting exchange of very different visions for America's future. Thank you.
Mrs. Esty.
Thank you, John, and thank you to Don and to the members of the chamber, to Lynn. I feel like I'm living in Waterbury these days. Many of you were at breakfast this morning for the United Way, and I am pleased to be back here once again at this time. I've spent my lifetime giving to my community, standing up for school children as a mom, standing up for seniors as a member of the town council, to find a way to harmonize our community and bring them together. As an active participant in what I still think of as the Waterbury Foundation, but I know is now the Connecticut Community Foundation, on the Environment Committee, on the United Way, and as a state representative, standing up for workers in my town in Pratt & Whitney, when Pratt & Whitney decided to close a plant in our town, laying off 1,000 workers. I worked hard to make sure each and every one of them got a placement, had a place to go, and had retraining if they wanted. What you're going to hear today is two very different visions of America, and we do have very different paths going forward. And I think for what represents the values of Central and Northwest Connecticut, it will be very clear what the choice is. The answer on the Republican side is going to be similar to what you're going to hear from Andrew. And it's going to be similar because you're hearing it from Mitt Romney and from Paul Ryan. And that is a one-point solution. That is reduce taxes on the wealthy. That is the economic plan. And I think we need to have a much more balanced approach. We need to be investing in our small businesses. We need to be investing in manufacturing. We need to be investing in the education and in our youth. The failed policies of trickle-down economics did not work for George W. Bush. They will not work now. I'm looking forward to this debate and discussion today. I think the choices will be very clear, and I welcome your questions. And again, thank you all for your attention. Thank you all for your commitment to engaging in this important, most important of our civic responsibilities and opportunities, and that is to vote in an election. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Mr. Roraback, first question is for you. If you are elected to Congress this November, what will be your 3 top priorities to improve the economic well-being of the 5th Congressional District?
Well, my 3 top priorities to improve the economic well-being of the greater Waterbury area are first and foremost transportation. If we're going to have a healthy economy in greater Waterbury, we need to pay attention to the transportation infrastructure which is failing us. Anyone who's been on I-84 between the hours of 7 and 9 in the morning or 5 and 8 at night knows that we experience gridlock every day. So my hope is that as a member of Congress, I might be chosen to serve on the Transportation and Infrastructure Committee, which is a committee which makes important decisions about where we invest federal resources to improve our transportation infrastructure. As luck would have it, on Friday, Congressman Bill Schuster, who's likely to be the next chairman of that committee, is coming to Waterbury to listen firsthand to how we can improve the transportation situation here. And I'm enthusiastic about sharing with him what we need to do. Now, I've run out of time, and asking for 3 things in 1 minute was more than I could do, so I leave it to you, Mr. Moderator. I do have other things that are important to me.
All right, Mrs. Esty.
I have made small business and manufacturing and energy 3 focal points of my campaign, and I think they are highly relevant to Waterbury. I meet with small business owners every single day, and it is the one part of our economy that has come back least. And we're an economy that depends on our friends and neighbors having jobs and spending money in their communities. And I think we need to get Democrats and Republicans together to solve the credit problem that we have. Community banks and credit unions tell me every day how the new rules in place make it really hard for them to do what they want to do, what they need to do, which is to put that money out into the communities, to let our entrepreneurs and our small business owners hire new workers, buy a little bit more inventory. And that, I think, is a very important way to not only get bipartisan cooperation, but really help put people back to work. My second priority is manufacturing, and the time is up, so I hope we get
All right, let's do about 30 seconds more. Mr. Roraback?
Well, certainly small business and manufacturing. Let me just say the transportation thing is tied into small business, because if we succeed in securing a greater federal investment in improving our transportation infrastructure, that's going to translate into construction jobs in a state where the unemployment rate amongst construction workers is unacceptably high. I also want to focus on helping manufacturers in the Naugatuck Valley and healthcare. We need to strengthen and make sure that both Waterbury Hospital and St. Mary's Hospital have the resources they need to be here as strong presences in the community for the long run.
Thank you. Mrs. Esty.
On manufacturing, with a background in manufacturing with my family, I've spent a lot of time with family-owned businesses up and down the Naugatuck Valley. And we are beginning to do more in the state, but we need a partner in Washington who values and who gets the importance of manufacturing in building middle-class jobs and innovation in this country. On the issue of healthcare, it is absolutely essential that we find a way for our inner-city hospitals, like Waterbury Hospital and St. Mary's, to be successful in providing for the health and well-being of our citizens. We clearly are disappointed that this deal is not going forward, but we need, again, to have healthcare reform and move forward in a way that allows our city hospitals to be prosperous and to help promote the health of our citizens. Thank you.
Thank you. Mrs. Esty, you first run at this question. Economists at the University of Connecticut have warned of the ominous threat of another recession in 2013 when the so-called fiscal cliff conspired. Certain tax cuts, a payroll tax holiday, and extended unemployment benefits expire, and automatic federal budget cuts are scheduled to go into effect. What is your view of what is needed to address this situation and help our flagging economy?
Well, it's a very important issue. What's referred to as either the fiscal cliff or that big word of sequestration. I believe that for better and for worse, it looks like Congress is going to kick that can down the road again, and we've seen it at the state level. It's part of the reason I stood up and actually opposed my party leadership on a budget vote when we were facing a tough deficit situation in this state in 2009. Because we need to have a balanced approach, because certainly the most important thing is having economic growth. But how you get to that is really important. We're going to have to look at both the revenue side, which is why I believe we should keep in place the Bush tax cuts for the middle class, but allow the ones at the upper end to expire so that we can begin to really address the deficit, which is critically important. At the same time, we need to also look at spending, and that is going to have to be part of the package, and we need to be smart about spending. We should be cutting those subsidies for big oil and agribusiness. And we need to look hard at the defense budget and make sure we are investing in what will truly keep us safe in this country as we draw down to war. So I think there's a lot of opportunity for smarter spending and better spending cuts, and also for having revenue that's going to bring us back in line. Thank you.
Senator?
Thank you. I just want the record to be clear. I served with Elizabeth in the legislature in 2009, and while it is true that she did, on one occasion, vote against her party on a budget vote, at the moment of truth, when it really mattered, Elizabeth sided with her party. And in the depths of the worst economic downturn our state has ever experienced, she chose to increase spending by nearly $1 billion and to increase taxes by nearly $1 billion, and held out the promise that increasing spending and increasing taxes would lead us to economic recovery. That policy has failed the state of Connecticut. UConn just released another study that shows that while other states are beginning to feel the signs of an economic recovery, Connecticut's economy is still shrinking. In my view, the worst thing we can do now, at a moment when this country is beginning to show signs of economic vitality, is to raise taxes on anyone. My position is we should keep tax rates as they currently are. We can't afford to lower anyone's taxes now, but I don't think we can afford to raise them either. So I think if we keep a moratorium for 1 year on current tax rates and revamp the entire tax code, that'll go a long way to addressing the ominous things that are in the offing with the fiscal cliff.
Okay, thank you. Next question.
I think maybe some more on this, actually.
Okay, we'll do 30 seconds.
30 seconds. We needed to have a budget in 2009. We had gone for 2 months with no budget whatsoever, and schools were about to open, and we ended up putting together a compromise that was a lot better than the budget that I had originally vetoed. Now, Andrew claims the mantle of independence, but has voted straight party line with his party on budget every single time, whether it's a Republican governor or a Democratic governor. So again, I think it's not just voting no on a budget, it's doing the hard work of putting together a package that will actually pass with bipartisan support, whoever the president is, whoever is serving in either party. And that is the record I have. Serving a Republican town like Cheshire, I had to take that approach. A balanced approach that looks at smart spending and that looks at appropriate revenue. Thank you.
Mr. Roraback.
And please, I would never apologize for not having supported the budgets that the state of Connecticut has passed over the past several years. They have been an abomination, and they have brought this state to a very precarious financial situation. So you won't hear me apologize for standing up against these budgets. They've been incredibly irresponsible. But what you need to remember, you may not remember the 2009 budget. There were, in fact, 8 Democrats in the House of Representatives who recognized that increasing taxes and increasing spending at that moment in time was the wrong thing to do. And they did have the courage to vote no on a budget that was way out of whack. That budget raised more than 700 fees. There was no middle-class person in Connecticut who escaped that budget without being hit hard by higher fees and higher taxes. It was the wrong thing to do, and we're living the consequences of it today.
Okay, Mr. Roraback. For the past several years, our region's manufacturers have waited in anticipation of support from Congress. How will you specifically improve the plight of our region's manufacturers?
Well, let's first focus on tax policy. The United States of America has a corporate income tax rate of 35%, one of the 2 highest in the world. Only Japan has a higher corporate income tax rate. In the past 4 years, 75 countries have reduced their corporate income tax rate. The last time America did so was 1988. I met with executives at the Stanley Works in New Britain last week, and they said to me, Andrew, we're making a lot of money overseas that we can't afford to bring back to Connecticut to expand our plants and equipment because tax policy is so disadvantageous. So to help manufacturers, we need to change the corporate tax rate. We also need not to be raising taxes on small manufacturers when they want to grow, when they want to put more people back to work. 70% of manufacturers pay their taxes on an individual basis, either through a subchapter S corporation or an LLC. And the tax increases that Mrs. Esty wants to impose on January 1st would hit small manufacturers hardest and make it much more difficult for them to create the middle-class jobs we so desperately need.
Mrs. Esty.
One of the first things we need to do is make sure that China is not cheating on currency. If you talk to the manufacturers, as I have, up and down the Naugatuck Valley, this is a major problem. China, not only is China undercutting with low wages, with bad environmental standards, with inadequate labor standards, frankly, for child labor, but they also have been cheating on currency. And this is going to be very important if we want to have a level playing field for American jobs. So we are a trade-oriented state, but we need to have not only free trade, but it needs to be fair trade. So that's one of my first priorities. We need, frankly, when I talk with manufacturers, they want a partner in Washington who actually believes in manufacturing, who's going to support the skill training. One of the biggest issues we have is we haven't invested in our young people enough. They don't have the technical skills they need. So we need to be working more closely and supporting science, technology, engineering, and math skills. We need to be innovative about education to help with, for example, loan forgiveness programs, in addition to apprenticeship programs and partnership programs that allow the private sector to be working with our students, training them in these incredibly important skills. Thank you.
Go ahead.
There was an article that ran last week that says that China is poised to lose 3 million jobs that could come back to this country because labor costs are rising, transportation costs are rising. What do we need to do in the 5th District to bring those jobs here? We have to control healthcare costs. I respectfully believe that the President's healthcare bill that my opponent supports is going to raise the cost of manufacturing substantially. We also need to lower energy costs. Connecticut is very uncompetitive in the energy field. I support the Keystone Pipeline because we have to have a broader national energy policy to bring energy prices down. And lastly, we have to have an education system that feeds to our manufacturers young people with the skills they need to take the jobs that are available. I was happy to support expanding to 2 additional community colleges, the very successful program we have at Nantucket to train people for the jobs we have now.
We're going to do energy as the next question, so you may want to leave that out of your response here.
Well, certainly energy policy, I'm glad we're going to address that next because that is very important. And one of the reasons we are seeing a resurgence of jobs in America is because of the higher cost of doing business in China. And it's also a slowing down of their demand. This is going to be important. But again, I think we can learn from other countries and we can be smart about what we do. And Germany has made a long investment in supporting manufacturing by its tax policies and its trade policies, and has invested as an unqualified good in technical skills of its young people. So again, if we are going to invest in our greatest resource, it's the American people. And there's a huge opportunity with manufacturing, but we really need to seize that by the technical skills. And it's got to start with education.
Okay. Mrs. Esty, this question for you first. There are arguments regarding national energy policy that favor either pursuing a change to alternative fuel sources or increasing access to clean fossil fuels. What do you think Congress should do to ensure our region has the resources to grow economically as well as to have viable energy sources in the future?
Well, it's critically important for this country's economic success and national security that we move over time to clean, affordable, sustainable energy. And frankly, when we do that, it will disentangle us from dangerous regimes around the world that don't support our values and that frankly have taken our money and use that money to fight us. So this is important for national security as well. Now this is going to be, we live in a transition time. We live in a transition time from fossil fuel to whatever comes next. It's one of the reasons I'm such a strong supporter, having been on the Energy and Technology Committee, such a strong supporter of making sure that we are doing major research and development in this country. If you look at what we had, nuclear energy, which has its own problems at this point, but that was an outgrowth of American investment in research and development. We need to be pursuing cleaner fuels. I do oppose the Keystone Pipeline, and we can talk about why in a minute. Natural gas provides, I think, a very good opportunity for a cleaner transition fuel. I think coal, which has caused a great deal of asthma and other respiratory problems in our state in particular, is not something we should be pursuing, and it is a priority of the Republican House of Representatives and Mitt Romney, and I think it's the wrong direction. I think we need to move forward and hopefully get more time. Thank you.
Andrew.
Well, I've been a very vocal supporter of promoting alternative energy sources for our state and for our country, because clearly the future is going to lie in those sources. But we live in the here and now, and the good news in our economic environment is that in the year 2000, about $10 billion was invested in new natural gas and oil wells. In the year 2012, we're investing $140 billion as a nation. It's one of the bright signs in our economic recovery. We need to make sure that we expand our natural gas infrastructure in this state. I've worked very hard with Kimberly-Clark, which is the largest private sector employer in my state Senate district, to build a $15 million cogeneration facility with help from the state of Connecticut, which enabled them to strengthen their presence in New Milford and to keep jobs in New Milford. And so I think that we need to take better advantage of domestic sources of supply, which can now be extracted without harming the environment. And that's obviously the balance we have to strike.
Why don't we do another round here, another 30 seconds. Go ahead.
That would be great. As a member of the Energy and Technology Committee, I worked on trying to support cogeneration projects and other important efficiency projects, because one thing we haven't talked about is the advantages that come from using less energy. Then you don't have to produce it. We need to be doing more as in this country. We've begun to see some progress on vehicle standards, but there's more we can do in terms of building standards and allowing us to be energy independent by not using as much as we currently do. And when we do that, we can then export those same technologies to other countries around the world. The entire world runs on energy. Everyone wants it to be clean, sustainable, and affordable. So again, American ingenuity has that opportunity if we have a government that believes in that and supports that consistently and long-term, allows the private sector to make those investments.
Andrew, we'll give you 45 seconds.
Thank you. And I was proud. I'm the chairman of the Regulation Review Committee in Hartford, which is not the most glamorous committee, but we do important work. And when I was chairman of the committee, we adopted the Regional Greenhouse Gas Initiative, which is a multi-state approach to reducing harmful emissions. And the proceeds of those programs go into promoting energy efficiency, both in Connecticut small businesses, and I would be surprised if there weren't many small manufacturers, small businesses here that haven't taken advantage of the Clean Energy Fund. And when money was threatened to be taken away from the Clean Energy Fund, I objected and fought very hard to put it back, because Connecticut residents and Connecticut businesses benefit greatly when we help them do the right thing, which is use less energy. It saves all of us money, and it helps all of us have a stronger presence in this state.
Okay, Mr. Roraback, this question is for you. What direction should Congress take regarding the Patient Protection and Affordable Care Act? Should the legislation be repealed, replaced, or should provisions be enacted to exempt Connecticut, since our state has long been in the forefront of healthcare mandates?
Well, there are many elements of the Patient Protection and Affordable Care Act which, in my view, embody desirable policy. Exhibit A being the requirement that young people be able to stay on their parents' health plan until they're 26. That's a law we passed in Connecticut several years ago and that I was happy to support, supported it enthusiastically. I also think that it is wise policy for us to say to insurance companies, you can't discriminate against someone on the basis of a pre-existing condition. I think that that should be the rules. But what I've learned, the more I learn about this law, the more uncomfortable I am with the unintended consequences. Becton Dickinson has a factory in Canaan which employs 300 of my constituents. They're going to be paying $50 million more a year in taxes, whether they make a profit or not, because of the medical device tax. And yesterday, I was at a supermarket in Torrington, where they're no longer going to be able to afford to provide their part-time workers with health care coverage because of the reach of this law. So at $1 trillion, leaving 30 million Americans with no health care coverage whatsoever when fully implemented, I think we can and must do a lot better.
Mrs. Esty.
I believe the Affordable Care Act is a necessary but incomplete first step. We need to do more. And what we've heard from Andrew is like the kid saying, I want to start with the sundae and I'll get to the spinach later. You cannot have a program that has the things you like covering pre-existing conditions, covering young people up to the age of 26, ensuring no lifetime limits. You can't have all of that unless you have a comprehensive plan that ensures everyone participates. Now, I supported sustenance, which was the state's healthcare plan, our healthcare reform. Andrew opposed it. If we were to repeal the Affordable Care Act, as he is promoting, we would open up the Medicare donut hole. You may remember that from 2006, right? At this point, if senior citizens, it is estimated, would have $6,400 of additional cost in Medicare per person if we overturn the Affordable Care Act. That is not a plan forward. It does not work. It doesn't work because Mitt Romney says it, doesn't mean it works. And the 30 million figure is just simply not true. It's been disproven by fact checkers on that. So I hope we have another round because I think this is a very important difference between our positions.
All right, let's go for another 30.
Of course, Mrs. Esty is entitled to her own opinion. That's what makes the world go round. But she's not entitled to her own facts. The $6,400 claim is completely disingenuous and unrelated to the Affordable Care Act. You have to ask yourselves, when doctors and hospitals receive $400 million less to support the Medicare plan, will that or will that not have consequences on access? This program costs too much and delivers too little. We can do better, and we ought to focus more on things that promote health, like reducing smoking, exercise, and good nutrition as the answer to controlling the cost of healthcare, because this is not controlling the cost of healthcare. Premiums continue to rise at unacceptably high rates, and this bill has failed to address that central issue.
Mrs. Esty.
The 30 million figure is not fact. That is conjecture. That is the suggestion that the IBMs of this country will suddenly not provide health care to their workers. Now, we do need to do more with small businesses to ensure that they have access to affordable programs for their workers. But it is sheer nonsense to assert, as the U.S. Chamber of Commerce does, that the largest companies in America will suddenly throw their employees out the door. It does not make any sense. And it should not matter whether you live in Connecticut or Kentucky or Texas, whether you have access to health care in America. We need to have a healthy population. These are important steps. We need to do a lot more on cost. But that should be done as part of comprehensive health care reform that ensures everyone has access and that we don't focus on dealing with the problem at the end of the day with emergency rooms and not paying for preventive care.
Okay. Mrs. Esty, the 5th District has long been a stronghold for manufacturing, but it carries with it a legacy of brownfield pollution. What specific steps and legislation will you propose to spur additional brownfield remediation in this district?
Well, it's a great question. I'm glad whoever asked that, because that is a critically important issue for Waterbury and the surrounding region. Because let's look, it's got two pieces to it. One is that brownfields, the laws were put in place to protect communities from contamination, and that remains a risk when they're not cleaned up. But it was never designed to take permanently out of circulation important properties in our communities. So we need to get this unstuck. There's good work being done by Representative Jeff Berger, along with the governor and with the administration right now to get this process going. But we need more flexibility, I think, out of EPA to free up the ability to put these properties in play. I met with folks here, along with Jerry Reyes, with Latinos Unidos in the south end of Waterbury, and families who are eager to explore alternatives. For example, urban greenhouses. This is being done in some parts of America, urban greenhouses, to reclaim brownfields and to teach skills about growing food in greenhouses, about nutrition, and get back onto the tax rolls these properties and to provide work for people in our community. Thank you.
Senator Roraback.
Well, first I want to welcome, there is somebody here from the U.S. Chamber of Commerce representing that organization today, and I thank you for being here, and I thank you for the good work you do on behalf of job creators across this country. And I was pleased to receive your endorsement and the endorsement of the National Federation of Independent Business as well. Your point of view is an important point of view that I think all of us should give great consideration to. On the question of brownfields, as the ranking member on the Environment Committee in Hartford, and as someone who's represented the city of Torrington for 18 years, the need to put brownfields back into productive use is critical to the health of our center cities, the health of our economy, and the health of our future here in the 5th District. And so I, for one, believe that we need to be realistic in setting standards for remediation that are achievable and affordable. Public health can never be compromised, but we shouldn't make the standards so exacting that no one can afford to bring these properties back to productive use.
Okay. Mr. Roraback, you get this one first. Connecticut has traditionally fared worse than many other states during the extended recessions. States must borrow from the federal government to meet their unemployment benefit obligations, resulting in increases in employer wage taxes. What measures will you support to reduce the impact on Connecticut's small businesses and to allow them to grow jobs?
Well, Jonathan, all of my focus as a member of Congress is going to be on working as a partner with businesses large and small in the 5th District to enable them to prosper and create more jobs. The way we're going to lessen the impact of the assessments that are made for unemployment compensation is by having fewer people unemployed. And if we can come up with a tax policy that rewards investment, that rewards expanding plant and equipment, that rewards creating new jobs, we'll be well on the way to lessening the burden that the unemployment situation is visiting, most importantly, on those who are unemployed. So in my view, creating an economic climate where people can be certain as to what tax policy will be, where people can be certain as to what the future of healthcare will be, that will get a lot of capital off of the sidelines if the capital hasn't been taxed away to make the investments that we need to give people the middle-class job opportunities that we all so desperately want.
Mrs. Esty.
I think one of the first things we need to do is deal with this credit situation that we find small business in, who feel locked out from access to credit. I'll give you an example of Lucinda in Cheshire, the hair salon, who wanted to add a mastectomy product line to her medical health care that she provides for people who have medical hair loss. She was not offered a small business loan. She was offered the opportunity to take out another mortgage. She hadn't missed a single payment in 26 years. But the bank said, frankly, we know you, we trust you, but you know what? The regulators won't let us do that. So when I see a problem like that, and I think about what it means to people in our community, I think that is the job of a member of Congress, to get in there and cut through the red tape, not just for her, but for all the other small business people, to say, we have got to fix these regulations to help our people, to help our banks, loan to small business people, and that needs to be job one, I think, to help small business get going in our district and across America.
Senator?
And I think it probably stands to reason that the reason Lucinda is having this problem is because Dodd-Frank's went way over the top in terms of a regulatory system that goes much further than was necessary. And instead of capturing the bad guys, and of course we all know there were bad guys that brought this economy to its knees in 2008, now Dodd-Frank's is capturing the good guys and the good women, like Lucinda, and the good people that work at our small community-based banks right here in town. Dodd-Frank's is making it harder for them to meet their mission of serving the communities and helping small business grow. And it's but one example of a regulatory state that has gone too far and that is really imposing a chilling effect on economic growth here in the 5th District.
Sorry? You want to go to next? All right, 30 seconds more, please.
I think what you're seeing is we need to be smart as a country and learn from our mistakes. Frankly, we got to the situation of the big banks failing because there was too little regulation. And there may well have been overcompensation now, and it's hitting small banks. That should be a partisan issue. That should just be being smart, practical Americans to fix that. And one of the other areas we need to look at about smart policy is a tax policy that would encourage companies to reinvest in long-term value creation here in this country, rather than parking their money on the side. That's what we're doing right now, and we need to change those policies to have them investing again in this country.
Andrew? Good pass? Okay. Mrs. Esty, this question is for you. You each portray yourselves as a moderate, willing to back your party's leadership or buck your party's leadership when the impact of their policies on our district calls for doing so. What issues impacting the 5th District's business community would lead you to disagree with your party's leadership?
Well, they're not in power at this point, but I think some of that probably does have to do about the exact balance of spending and of tax cuts. I have been more aggressive on spending cuts than many others in my party. And I think we do need to look at areas where we can be smarter about how we spend. That means you have to look at what programs are working well. If we have 10 anti-poverty programs, we should be actually looking to see which are the most successful ones, which are the ones that are working well, and let's concentrate our funding in the ones that work well. And I think we have to be demanding across the board. We have to make sure that our regulations are having the impact they're supposed to have. But we also have to make sure, if you say something like, what's happened with the meningitis issues in the last few weeks, we've seen what happens when regulations fall down on the jobs and people are dying. So that again, the answer is not always stop all regulation, but make sure nothing's falling through the cracks and that we are allowing smarter spending, smarter regulations that are actually responsive and working in our communities.
Mr. Roraback?
Well, I think that for people that are paying attention to this race, it's become pretty evident that Elizabeth and I disagree on very little when it comes to social issues. So the areas where we disagree are largely economic issues. And I have said that I think that in the main, my party has a healthier approach to solving our economic problems than the President and Elizabeth have. That having been said, I've also said that I wouldn't have supported Paul Ryan's budget. And one of the reasons I wouldn't have supported Paul Ryan's budget is because I think it cuts too dramatically assistance to America's college students, particularly in the form of Pell Grants. I think this country has an obligation to help any young person who wishes to improve themselves through higher education to be a meaningful partner in that process. And I think Connecticut businesses will suffer if fewer of our young people are given educational opportunities. So that's a place that I would part with my party because I think giving young people access to good education is critical to our future economic vitality.
Okay. Senator, this question goes to you first. There's no way you're going to answer this in a minute, so let's start with 2. All right, assuming Congress will actually take on the national debt crisis in the coming session, we'd like to ask you your views on Social Security. This is a multiple-part question. We'd appreciate your answer to each element. First, do you think Congress has borrowed or stolen trillions of dollars in Social Security tax payments Americans have made over the past 3 decades? Second, what would you do to avoid Social Security insolvency starting in January? For example, would you end the reduction in Social Security taxes approved by Congress 2 years ago? Would you raise contributions? Would you means test benefits? Would you increase the retirement age? Do you have other ideas?
Thank you, and I'll try to remember all of those questions in my answer. Let me first state clearly my position on Social Security and Medicare because they've been grossly mischaracterized in television advertisements that have been paid for by my opponent and the Democratic Congressional Campaign Committee. I promise my parents, and I promise all of you, that if you're 50 years of age and older, I have no interest in changing anything about the current benefit structure of either Medicare or Social Security. If you're under the age of 50, I want those programs to be there for you. And the only way it will be there for you is if we consider a whole host of recommendations. And I did say at a forum in March in Simsbury that we ought to consider the recommendations of the Simpson-Bowles Commission, which is a lot of smart people that our president brought together to come up with solutions. It was my statement that we ought to consider the recommendations that has brought us this barrage of TV ads which completely misrepresent my position and which are a great disservice to the seniors who have been scared by them. My opinion is the only way for these programs to survive is, first of all, for us to have a growing economy. Because a growing economy will mean more people have jobs, more people are paying taxes, and more people are supporting the system. But the other critical component of saving these programs is by Republicans and Democrats checking their partisan hats at the door and coming together to find solutions that work for the long run. That's something that I want to go to Washington to be a part of. In Hartford, I've worked with Democrats consistently through my 18 years because it's the only way I can get anything done. I've been in the minority for 18 years. I can't get anything passed without finding common ground with people on the other side. That's where I think the answer is to saving Social Security and Medicare, and I'm prepared to put my shoulder to the grindstone to get it done.
Mrs. Esty.
We do part company on these issues, and I want to be very clear about my position. I am a strong supporter of these two programs, which have done more to ensure a safe and secure retirement for Americans than anything else this country has ever created. These are programs that people have earned through a lifetime of hard work and benefits I believe they are entitled to receive, and I am very strong and unwavering in my support of them. And we've heard that Andrew Roraback, who is, I will note, he is 52 and I'm 53, so these changes occur lower than we, younger than we are. But I believe they need to be there. Now let's talk about how do we make that true? How do we ensure that these programs exist long into the future? Number one, we do need to stop Congress from raiding them. It was part of the reason I voted against budgets in the legislature, where the legislature had raided pension funds. It is a dangerous temptation, and they really do need to be safeguarded. Number two, we need to raise the income cap at which they're collected for Social Security. It hasn't been adjusted for a while, and that will do a lot to help ensure that Social Security is in place. I feel very strongly about this in part because I know many women, in particular, seniors and soon-to-be seniors, who rely on Social Security. They've had time in and out of the workforce. They have no pension. They may not even have a 401k because instead they put money into sending their kids to school. And now to be told that at the age of 50 or 55, that suddenly they've got to come up with a whole new plan for their retirement, I just don't think I really don't think that's fair. I do think we need to safeguard these programs. I hope we talk more about Medicare and on bipartisanship. I will just say getting bipartisan cooperation, on protecting historic barns and rock walls is not the same thing as bipartisan cooperation on budgets and on these important issues of are we going to safeguard Social Security and Medicare? Are we going to fundamentally change them? I know which side I stand on. Thank you.
Okay, well, let's try.
I think that an impression could have falsely have been created. Again, falsely and, in my view, unjustifiably been created. Let me be clear. If you are age 50 or older, my commitment is to maintain these programs exactly as they are today. If you're under age 50 and you want those programs to be there for you, we're going to have to make some changes. Now, maybe Mrs. Esty thinks we're not going to have to make some changes, but that would be out of line with the actuarial reality that is coming at us pretty quickly. I want to come up with solutions that make sure these programs are there for the long run. Maintaining them exactly as they are now for people under age 50 is something that is mathematically going to be very challenging to do.
All right, well, let me, again, try for some specifics here. It could even be a yes or no. Will you vote, if you're in Congress in January, to continue the reduction in payroll taxes on Social Security, or will you allow it to go back to the previous level? Yes or no?
On the payroll tax?
On the payroll taxes.
I could see doing a short-term extension on that, but not a permanent extension. Clearly, we need to get the deficit under control, and I think perhaps a 1 year, again, to help the middle class. This is a really important issue for the middle class at this point, and I think it's appropriate to consider extending it for a year.
Senator?
And my position has been the same from the beginning. We need a 1-year moratorium on all current tax rates while we undertake a complete and comprehensive overhaul of a tax code which is broken, antiquated, and doesn't serve the needs of our country.
Okay, now if you have a belief that something's going to happen to people under 50, do you have any specifics on what you would prefer? Would you prefer to raise contributions? Would you means test benefits? Would you increase the retirement age? What else?
Well, since I'm not supporting that, that's a question for Andrew Roraback.
Okay, Andrew, you can start.
Let me first say, I agree with Elizabeth that we should raise the income tax, that over time we're going to need to impose the Social Security tax on a higher level of income. When it comes to other specifics, I am not in favor of privatizing Medicare. The reality is that medical costs are rising exponentially despite the President's health care bill. And privatizing Medicare, my fear is that we wouldn't keep up with the rising costs of medicine and people would be left holding the bag. So I'm not for privatization of either Medicare or Social Security. What I am for is considering the recommendations of the Simpson-Bowles Commission. There are many of them, and privatization is not one of them. All of them should be considered, and for people under age 50, I invite you to go to the moment of truth. It's called the moment of truth for a reason, because it's the moment of truth. We have to do something to make these programs available for all of us in the long run. So I think that Republicans and Democrats of goodwill could go in and recognize that the programs need to be modified to be made sustainable for those who are under the age of 50.
Okay. Mrs. Esty?
First, you did not hear a single specific, not one. And given the lack of kumbaya moments in Congress right now, I'm not terribly optimistic that sitting a bipartisan group together is going to just magically bring results. Let's talk about Medicare, because that is really important, and Andrew referenced it. There are things we can and need to do to deal with the cost of Medicare, and they are not about voucherizing, they aren't about privatizing. What they are about is seriously dealing with costs. First, we should allow the federal government to negotiate prescription drug prices. Prescription drugs make up an ever larger percentage of the Medicare budget, and every private company that self-insures, every insurance company does this. They use the power of the market to bring down those prices. Currently, the federal government is denied that opportunity to do that. We need to do that. We need to start paying to keep Americans healthy rather than paying to clean up when things go wrong. We need to be tying compensation longer term, payments to hospitals and doctors. We need team approaches that, again, focus on promotion of health and independent living. We need to not institutionalize our elderly in nursing homes, which is extremely expensive and frankly not very pleasant. But we need to find ways to put that in the community and support assisted living in our communities.
John, I think we need to go to closing. Yeah, we did. Okay. So, Mr. Roraback, you would go first, please, with your 2-minute closing statement.
Well, I want to thank you, Jonathan, for once again doing a stellar job. I want to thank the Waterbury Chamber for bringing us together, but most importantly, I want to thank everyone here in the audience who cared enough to set aside 2 hours today to get to know the candidates for Congress a little bit better. As a state legislator, my success has always been measured by the success of the communities and the individuals that I represent. I have a passion for public service, for working to solve problems large and small. There is no doubt that our country is facing large problems, and I have no doubt that in the course of all of our lives, we'll all continue to encounter small problems, where a member of Congress and his or her staff can be helpful in solving. My success as a member of Congress will be measured by your success traveling from Waterbury to Hartford a little bit faster because I-84 has been improved. My success as a member of Congress will be measured by 2 hospitals which are back strong, serving the community, employing people, and meeting the healthcare needs of this region. My success as a member of Congress will be measured by the success of the many small manufacturers and other small businesses in Greater Waterbury who are working so hard every day to bring economic life to the region, to hire more people, and to pay their taxes, which support our schools and all of the public services we all rely on. So I'm asking for you to give me the opportunity to serve you. If you give me the chance to serve you, I promise you, you will see a whole lot of me. Because the only way I've been able to do my job as a state legislator is by staying in very close contact with the individuals I represent. Because if I don't know what matters to you, I can't do my job in the way you deserve for it to be done. So thank you again for your attention. I ask for your vote on November 6th to give me an amazing opportunity to serve all of you. Thank you.
Thank you. Mrs. Esty?
Thank you so much, and I can assure you that the same commitment I've shown to being active in this community over the last 18 years that I have had the privilege of being a next-door neighbor in Cheshire and being active in the United Way and the Community Foundation, that same grounding in the values of Waterbury, the values of Central and Northwest Connecticut, I will take with me if I have the honor of serving you in Washington. What we've seen today here is a very clear choice that's facing us in just less than 2 weeks. The failed policies of the Washington Republican proposal, which is a one-point plan to extend tax breaks, or whether we're going to have policies that invest in our small businesses, policies that invest in education, policies that invest in the manufacturers of our country. As you try to turn off the TV with all those super PAC attack ads, I ask you to look at our policies and look at our positions and think about what the different visions are for this country. Are we going to move forward and focus on Americans who need jobs in our communities? Are we going to focus on college affordability? Are we going to make sure that our manufacturers have a level playing field, or we're just going to keep shipping those jobs overseas? Can our seniors and our soon-to-be seniors count on Medicare and Social Security to be there when they need it? The challenges we face are big, but I have faith in the American people, and we have faced those tough challenges before, and we've done it by being smart, we've done it by being not ideological, but by being commonsensical and working together. We don't take no for an answer in this country. We find a way to make it work. And it's that spirit of common sense problem solving that we need to have here today. I've served on the local level and balanced the budget. I've served in my community, fought the fight in the legislature, and I ask for your help and support to take that grounded, commonsensical approach of our Northwest and Central Connecticut can-do values, take them to Washington, and build a better future for our families and our communities. Thank you, and I ask for your vote on November 6th. Thank you very much.
Thank you. That concludes this portion of our debate. Before I relinquish the microphone to Dawn, I want to put in a small plug here for CTN. They broadcast the debate live last